Hello. It's looking like we're kosher here. Hoping that everything's all good. Nice to see everybody. My name's Dustin Cormier. For those of you watching at home, I'm a little bit late here. It's always super delicate process getting all this stuff kind of wrangled together on the computer. At least it's delicate for me. Now, the reason is because usually when I'm about to do a video, I spend like most of my time before the video like meditating instead of getting things ready so that I'm clean and clear internally, so that when I come on the computer and my external world is all messed up, I can be chill about it. Story of my life. But in any case, hello everybody. My name's Dustin Cormier. It's a real pleasure to be here today talking with you through my channel, How to Rock Spirit. Today we're going to talk about the year of the snake coming through the sun sign, the western sun signs of Aries, Scorpio, and Aries, Scorpio, and Leo. I'd like to fix this. The reason is because Aries, Scorpio, and Leo all are ruled by what we call the Fire Pancha Tattva in Vedic astrology. And we're going to talk about what that means. Hi, Goosey. Nice to see you. Can you hear me okay, Goosey? I was just having a bit of trouble with my audio, but it looks like we're looking better now. Feel free to let me know, Goosey, if you can, if anything seems wonky, but it looks like we're good. Thank you for your patience, folks. Like I said, I'm here a little bit late today, but now we're cooking. So, yeah, today's episode is on Year of the Snake, coming through Aries, Leo, and Scorpio. The reason we've got Aries, Leo, and Scorpio is because they're all, in a way, ruled by the Fire Pancha Tattva, which is Mars. Mars represents the essence of these three particular signs. In the Pancha Tattvas, and this is a Vedic astrology thing, Leo is kind of grouped in as being ruled by Mars, and Cancer, as the moon, is grouped in with Venus. And there's a 5-element system, which I'm going to show you just, a little glimpse of right now, just so you see what I'm talking about. You can see this Leo, Aries, and Scorpio are all grouped into this Fire Pancha Tattva. And the Fire Pancha Tattva interacts with Venus, the Water Pancha Tattva, and it also interacts with Saturn, the Air Pancha Tattva. So we're going to talk a little bit about all of those as soon as we get into the video. First, I always like to show a little bit about myself. My name's Dustin Cormier. I'm a Leo ascendant with Scorpio sun, so I really resonate with this Fire Pancha Tattva fiery nature. I'm in my fancy red suit today because we're doing such a fire-influenced grouping, not just Aries, Scorpio, and Leo, but also the Year of the Snake. We're going to talk about that as soon as we get into it. I like to show this every video just so people can see the nature of the consciousness that's filtering the data that you're listening to. Data is never perfect, so you always have to consider the eye that's looking at it. This eye guy. Sagittarius moon. I'm in the year of the goat, the month of the boar, and my main element, everyone who watches my Chinese astrology knows that the day stem, the heavenly stem of your day pillar, is the real, truest, deepest expression of your nature. There's lots of things we can talk about, like how I was born at 11 p.m. That's like the winter of the day cycle. I was also born in the month of the boar, which is also the dead of winter, and those two are water elements that make my water day stem super watery. I've got way too much of that water thing, which I have to balance with everything else in my life. I do that, though, by expressing the nature and power of that self-directedness. I'm a very ambitious fellow, and I'm just always pushing to build myself up more and to build everyone else around me, as long as it caters to what I can do with my own power. And that's really deeply expressed in my Chinese chart. I'm saying this because I like people to know that there's so much more to the Chinese chart than just looking at your year sign. In the same way that there's so much more to your Western chart than just your sun sign. You might think you're an Aries, Leo, or Scorpio sun, and that's like all that you are. There's so much more going on. There's the angles to your sun. There's all the other planets. There's where your Mars is, especially for you if you're a Leo, Aries, or Scorpio. Mars is a deep factor of your expression. But the Chinese is the same way. Just because you're the year of the snake doesn't mean that that's like all that you are. The deepest point of Chinese astrology is the heaven stem of your day pillar. And we're going to be talking about that stuff in later videos. But for now, we're going to stick to the subject. Now, what I've decided to do today, before we start talking about the nature of Aries and Scorpio and Leo and how they relate to this sign combination, I thought I'd read a little bit just about the snake specifically. I like these little books. This is Little Giant Encyclopedia, the Zodiac, the diagram group. Gives a good little piece, a little synopsis, a little snack about what the nature of the sign that we're reading today is all about. And I wanted to do this intro for the snake because, as we're going to read, a lot of people consider the snake to be an inauspicious symbol here in the West. For whatever reason. They're a beautiful creature, really, when you look at them. I guess that people just don't like the idea of things creepy crawling around their arms and stuff, and it's just like, there's this thing, I don't know where it is. It could go up my butt or something like that. So that's why people get freaked out about the image of the snake. But, as we can read, the Chinese mythology, in fact, holds that a half-human snake was the father of the Chinese emperors. In the West, the snake is often regarded as evil, but in Chinese astrology and in Chinese culture, the snake, the image of the snake, especially the year of the snake in Ba-zi, it's associated with beauty and wisdom. The snake may appear languid and serene, but they're always very mentally active. It's fire coming through the metal triad, The metal triad is the thinkers, as we're going to learn about today. Snakes are very deep thinkers, and they give very good advice, although they don't generally like to take advice. They're capable of lying to get out of a scrape. The snake is linked with esoteric knowledge and spiritual discovery. Snakes are sacred to many peoples, cultures. They're often snake people, with a heavy emphasis of the snake, are often people who are psychic, or who are interested in the psychic or the mystical or the religious. People in the snake generally tend to be interested in these things, especially because they're such deep thinkers. They tend to be thinking in their heads like, what is the bottom line of whatever it is that I'm interested in that is causing the nature of this field to be working the way it does? And so they start thinking like, sometimes it's just the way of nature, the way humans are to deal with a certain field, whatever their field is, whether they're a mechanic or a doctor or a religious person. They're trying to think of what makes everything tick. And oftentimes the snake thinks so deeply that they end up thinking about the fact that maybe it's not because of the earth. Maybe there are just timeless realities of metaphysical realities that they don't even understand, but they can see. Snakes are good at it's like a snake can be almost blind, but it doesn't matter because they have a field of vibrations that they feel around them. They feel sound vibrations, and they can feel sound vibrations coming even when they can't see them. It's the kind of wisdom and depth of thought and insight that the snake has. Now, the typical image of the snake is one basking in the sun doing nothing. Many interpret this as laziness. Even with Aries, Scorpio, and Leo, you might, who are coming through the snake, you might see them lounging a lot and just basking in the sun with the sunglasses on, just like, this is what I'm living for. Oh yeah. These people are very cool like that. But in fact, snakes are very hardworking, despite this image. If something needs to be done, the snake will not shy from it. The secret is in their efficiency. The snake will get the job done in the quickest and most economical way, which is why they have plenty of time to relax. And especially when we're thinking of Aries, Leo, and Scorpio, I would say that these people could be workaholics, and they might play just as hard as they work. You know, it's like when it's time to work, I'm here, I'm ready, and I'm fully going into it so that I can relax later. And then when they relax, it's like they work hard at relaxing, if you know what I mean, you know? Beautiful, Nay. I'm so glad to hear that. You might enjoy this then, us talking about the snake. Now, I'm getting a little bit of lag on my computer. I would love to know if anyone could just let me know if my computer looks like it's slowing down. It's kind of is sometimes on my computer. I would just love to see if it is coming through that way to you guys. Because if it's not, then I don't give a damn about my own computer. As long as you guys are getting the full experience. So that was a nice little bit about the snake. What I wanted to do is just give you a little gumdrop of what the snake character is like. It's a mystical, hardworking person who plays as hard as they work. But they can love to meditate. They can climb very high in spiritual regards. They're going to climb hard and focus on their deepest desire of whatever it is that they want to do very hard. So if it's something in the material world, then they'll rock and roll it. But if that material world desire is connected deeply to some internal mystical sense of things, they can probably climb both. But once this person gets a spiritual sense of things, they'll probably work hard to cultivate that sort of spiritual realization. But they have to have the experience, you know, depends on their Western chart, as well as, you know, like transits to the Western chart, but also transiting figures in what's called the Da Yun. I want to talk about that more in these videos. The Da Yun is these 10-year periods in Chinese astrology. So if a snake gets a figure of, for example, the solitary star, it's also called Tai Chi, the mysticism star. I talk about it in my Chinese astrology videos. If the snake gets a Tai Chi star in their 10-year period, like especially when they're young, you know, between like 10 or 20 or between like 20 and 30 even, that's a great time for this. This snake person will probably they'll start to deeply sense like the way that things are, and they can become very powerful mystics, especially if they have the Tai Chi star in their natal chart. How that works is like, you know, for example, my solitary star, my Tai Chi mystical star is monkey. I don't have monkey in my chart, but I'm in the 10-year period of the monkey right now. So I've been deeply influenced by it since I was like 11. Since I was 20. So I'm in the 10-year period, and it's going to be done when I'm 30. So if the snake person has that star, then it might deeply influence them towards mysticism and spirituality. If you'd like to know more about that, I'm going to be talking about more of this stuff as we come along with these videos. For now, let's stick to our subject at hand. Oh, wow. That's cool. Nay West. Your mom, I guess, her motto is work hard and play hard. That's pretty cool. That's got snake written all over it. Now, let's get into, before we really go into the snake, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about, we're going to blend into our Western sphere right now and talk about these 3 sun signs and how they all relate to each other. That's Aries, Scorpio, and Leo. We're going to talk about how these 3 Mars-ruled signs all relate to each other. Even though, like, Scorpio is a water sign, it's still ruled by Mars. So it goes about the rulership of Mars, conquering, wanting to feel like it's contributing its logic and skills effectively in any relationship and anything in life. It goes about that in a watery way. But Scorpio is still ruled by Mars, just like these three signs are, or the other two. So let's go into a little bit of that. I should also say, at this moment, if anybody... Nice. Nice to have you here, Princess R. Scorpio Moon. Groovy. Thank you so much for contributing. And what I will say is anybody who's watching live, aloha. Yeah, wonderful. I'm in Canada. I'm from Toronto, Canada. It's always nice to have someone else from another part of the world here on our channel. This is How to Rock Spirit, and I always like to say that true spirit is a connection to the outer world. Stillness is a turning wheel, and you have to turn with the wheel of the world around you in order to be still within. And that being the case, I always encourage anybody to light up our spirit and the spirit of this channel with your own spirit and contribute. Feel free to say whatever you want. I'll try to answer questions as much as I can in relation to the topic at hand today. So please feel free. Here's me doing the Leo Ascendant thing. Hi, this is what I am. And this is today's topic, the sign of the serpent coming through the fire Pancha Tattva. It's Aries, Scorpio, and Leo. We're going to talk about a little bit about what the Pancha Tattvas are, what they mean in relation to what we're talking about. This is a little self-plug. My band Bosom, big up Sour Mash, just recently put out our first album. You can find it on Spotify as Chicks for Tricks on the back 9. Also, this is my first poetry book that I've recently done. You can find it on Amazon, or just look me up on dustincormier.net. Okay, so we're talking about the Pancha Tattvas today, right now in particular. Pancha means 5, and Tattvas means essences. So what I like to ask here is, do you ever notice that when you read like any astrology readings about the sun signs, there's so much data in there just about the archetype of the character that you're reading. And you might think that it's just, simply a matter of sacred geometry, of combining the 4s with the 3s, meaning there are 4 elements in the Western astrology. There are 4 elements and 3 modalities. So you have 3 different types of the 4 different elements, and that adds up to 12. And that makes up the nature of the characters that we're talking about. But for me, I always find that there's more. Whenever I first started, I'd read about the qualities, and I would think, that how do the astrologers know the nature of these characters? And there are things in there that are just like, that you would ascribe to the nature of Aries or Scorpio or Leo, that are more than just this, there's just some extra thing there. What I would say is that the writers of astrology are also intuiting another higher dial on top of the 4 elements. There's also a 5-element astrology going on top. How this works is that, however strong your Mars is going to influence Venus and the moon. However strong your Venus and the moon are, they're going to support and influence your Mercury, and all things related to Mercury, Like, the fact that you, coming to this channel, probably have the sun in Leo, Aries, or Scorpio, means that the sun energy is in that sign, and that you have to deal with that planet living in that house, that mansion, that place of, that field of consciousness that is Aries, Scorpio, or Leo. Sun's a good place here because Sun is obviously also a fire sign anyway. But the point here is to express that Mars has a relationship with Saturn. We know that Mars is exalted in Capricorn. This has to do with that, There are these cool little secret relationships in astrology that are always fun to talk about and to find out about. And that's partly what I'm trying to do with these videos, is to talk about how the Pancha Tattva relates to the sign. So we're talking about the Fire Pancha Tattva today. Now, this is a page that I always like to put here. Let's see if you guys can see it. Yeah. This is just something that I've basically gotten from Ryan Kirksack in my first year as an astrology apprentice through him. And he himself is really tied in with the research of Ernst Wilhelm. So feel free to pause this, check it out. It's basically talking about the dignity of your sun, meaning you could have the sun in Aries and it's exalted, and it's a good place for the sun no matter what. But if you've got like Saturn there with it, or if you've got the 8th lord with your sun, or if it's in the 8th house, or if Aries and the sun are both antagonistic to your ascendant lord, all these things. This whole page is going to talk about the prosperity of the house where the sun is situated. And this is primarily a sun reading. So, the authors had in mind from the books that we're going to read, they had in mind the sun in Aries, Scorpio, or Leo here. But I will invite you to consider that if you have your ascendant in Aries, Scorpio, or Leo, or if you have your ascendant lord in any of these 3 signs, it's going to really activate the sign in question. For example, if you're a Virgo rising, that means Mercury is your 1st house lord, your ascendant lord. And if you put Mercury in Leo, if you put Mercury in Scorpio, if you put Mercury in Aries, that is going to say something about that, your 1st lord is like your physical entranceway into reality. So that Mercury is going to be dealing with everything in an Aries way, or a Leo way, or wherever the Mercury is. So consider if your 1st lord is in any of these 3 signs, you might also get something from this reading as well. If you've got lots of personal planets, even if it's not the sun, if you've got, like your 1st lord with the moon in Scorpio, then you'll be able to get a lot out of the Scorpio reading. Just always keep in mind that these readings are centered on like a sun reading, so just keep that in mind. So what I want to say is that so let's consider everything here as mostly relating to a sun reading. I would like to say that regarding what we're going to read about the Fire Pancha Tattva, okay, that's Mars. Think of the Fire Pancha Tattva as Mars. We're talking about the Mars rulership of these 3 signs. Even though the sun is really what rules Leo, we're still considering it the Mars rulership in regards to Leo. So if you've got the sun in Leo, you're in a really good place because the sun is ruled by Leo anyway. But the sun also caters to this Mars rulership as being ruled by the Fire Pancha Tattva and the nature of the 5th, that element of the 5 elements. Consider that the 5 elements are different from the 4 elements. When we think of the 4 element astrology and we think of fire, it's a completely different thing from the 5 element fire. It's just something you got to burn in your brain. That sounds confusing, but the fact of Scorpio is the perfect way to explain it. Scorpio in the 4 element system is a water sign. But in the 5 element system, it's still ruled by Mars, which is the Fire Pancha Tattva, and it still has a fiery energy. And we can see that. When you talk to a Scorpio, they can be icy with that whole Pluto thing, but they can also be volcanic. They can be explosive. They are ruled by the fire. They're ruled by Mars very deeply, right? So that's kind of an explanation for that. With this thing here, I guess I should try to just, break this down a little bit. What I'm trying to say is that if you've got the sun in any of these three signs, it's going to do okay. Leo, Aries, or Scorpio, it's going to do okay because Leo does very well in its own sign. It does extremely well, probably best, in Aries, where it is exalted. And it does good in Scorpio too, because the Sun and Mars are good friends anyway. So, but if you have any other damage to your Sun, it's going to have a hard time expressing the essential nature of what the Sun is. The Sun is its own planet, and it has to, if it's got ill health in the chart, that blue page that we just saw is going to help describe what this health means for your Sun. And if your Sun has a hard time, if your Sun is weak, if it's, got any debilitations, if it's afflicted, if it's in an ugly house, if it's with an ugly house lord, if it's with Saturn, if it's aspected to Saturn, if it's aspected to if it's conjunct Mars, although in these signs that won't be so bad. But if it's got a Graha aspect by Mars, all these things can make for your Sun to be a little bit weaker. And that means it'll have a hard time expressing the essential nature of the Fire Pancha Tattva that we've got here. But even, the point here that I'm trying to say is no matter what, if you've got a hard karma and it's a hard challenge, if it's hard for you to express your Sun nature coming through these fire signs, it's a challenge for you. And if you're willing and devoted to look at life as a playground, as an opportunity to dissolve those karmic blockages to the bliss that's inside your nature inherently, then there could be much joy in life with those kinds of challenges. And every challenge is like this. No matter what, we're all being given the opportunity to realign ourselves to our bliss within our nature and to let go of those things which are holding us back from realization of that Atma, that blissful nature inside of us all. So, what matters is your quality of devotion and surrender to what is. Now, this is a note I always like to put here, but consider that if you've got the Sun in any of these three signs, Aries, Scorpio, or Leo, you're not going to have, you're looking pretty good probably. Although there still could be damage to your Sun, or there still could be damage to your Mars. Especially consider that if you've got the Sun, again, it'll do well in Aries and it'll do well in Leo, pretty much no matter what, in regards to the Sun. But you might still have Mars in Cancer. Mars is debilitated in Cancer. You might have, if you've got Cancer in your 4th house, that means that you're an Aries rising. Now, if your first lord being Aries, that means your first lord is Mars. And if you've got Mars in Cancer, not only is it debilitated, but it's in the 4th house. It's not a very strong place for Mars. What if you've got Saturn there too? And it makes it so that Saturn comes along and makes you feel shame whenever you try to express your sense of power in regards to your home, that being the 4th house. Mars in the 4th house doesn't do that well as much as when Mars is on top in the 10th house, because then Mars is focusing on things logically outside of itself. Mars in Cancer in the 4th house is a tough place, because that means the Mars is trying to express itself through its own emotional field, and it never feels satisfied with it. Mars likes to see its accomplishments out in the world and for everyone to come and pat them on the back. So if the Aries rising tries to express all their power by making themselves feel happy in the 4th house, especially with Saturn there, if that's a thing, serious damage to Mars and this Fire Pancha Tattva thing is being expressed through all that. So this is the point, is that if you have that, it'll make it tough for you to express your Sun sign energy, especially if you're like, a Scorpio Sun. But, if you're an Aries or a Leo Sun, at least your Sun will have you'll have a good, strong Sun, probably. All factors considered. Astrology is a very complex thing. But in any case, learn what it means to have a good, healthy Sun. consider whether your sun is that healthy, and if it is, also consider whether your Mars is healthy. Okay? Now, if you've got Mars, Mars is a friend to the moon in Cancer, so even though it's debilitated there, it's still not a good thing. The debilitation always hurts. If you've got Mars in Capricorn, Aquarius, Taurus, or Libra, it's pretty neutral. Capricorn's a great place for Mars because it's exalted there. But if your Mars is in the friend stack here, I'm always checking, sorry, to make sure. If Mars is in the friends stack in any of these signs, it's a good sign. If Mars is in Gemini or Virgo, it doesn't do as well. Mercury is an enemy to Mars. Where Mars does its best, especially if you're a Leo sun, if you're a Aries sun, if you're a Scorpio sun. Aries, Leo, and Scorpio sun express their sun energy, their bliss energy, by being ready to fight, by being ready to work, by being ready to hold down their pride. And if Mars is in Gemini or Virgo, when the time comes for them to use their sun energy, they're going to think twice before doing anything. They're going to think in a Gemini way, like, how are my actions going to affect me down the line? And am I doing the right action? And they do so much thinking, and their Mars energy is expressed through an analysis that is not conducive to Mars's best strength. Mars's best strength is applied when it's not really thinking emotionally. It's not really thinking about itself. Mars does best when it's got a job and the general tells him to do the job and he says, yes, I will do that. That is the logical directive coming from above and I will attack that. A person with an ugly Mars will think about every directive before it's given to them. Now, if you're a Leo sun, even let's just take Leo sun. If you're a Leo sun and you take pride as the sun being a different point from Mars. Your sun takes pride in being a Leo. It's proud and noble, and it's even a king unto itself. But in order to be a king unto yourself, you got to do your job well for the people. And if your noble job as a Leo is to do something, whatever it is, and if you've got Mars in Gemini or Virgo, someone comes along and tells you to do something, and you as the king think, is that going to be productive and practical in a Mercury way? Is that going to give me more resources that I can manage my time better? It's like if you've got a job to do as the king, Leo, and you're thinking about all these little details, you're not using your sun energy to its most natural and best expression. So, a Mars in Gemini or Virgo will hurt the nature of your Leo, even though the sun is in Leo and it's still doing good. So these are all contexts that you have to consider. You can't just look at the fact that you've got the sun in Aries or Leo and just think that everything is going to work out perfectly and good. You have to consider the nature of what the sun wants, and then consider the bridge to the sun's expression, that being Mars in this sort of particular reading, right? So keep all these things in mind. Now, I drank a whole bunch of vitamin C water before I jumped in here. So I'm going to go to the bathroom. Thanks, Nay West, yeah. Wonderful, guys. You guys are making me blush here, gosh. Thank you so much, my friends, my community, for being a part of this. Now, I don't usually go to the bathroom this quick, but I gotta pee. So I'll be right back, folks. Okay. Thanks for your patience, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to do the Leo rising horse thing here and check my hair. Hair check. Looking good. All right, we can move on. Now, as I said, the Fire Pancha Tattva is what Leo, Aries, and Scorpio express through. Now, what we're about to read here is the nature of someone who has a strong emphasis of the Fire Pancha Tattva. This particular thing here, this little article, was written in mind with having Mars as your strongest Shadbala planet. You'll read a lot into this, and you'll really see yourself in this if Mars is your strongest planet by Shadbala. You know, a Shadbala is just another thing that you have to consider. You can have all great-looking dignity aspects in regards to your Mars, but if it's weak in Shadbala, that's another thing that's going to give you a hard time in expressing the nature of the fire energy that you very much revolve yourself around. So this is the nature of the Fire Pancha Tattva expressed at its essence, in its best place. You might not have the capacity to really move with the nature of this, depending on how your Sun and Mars are. But this is the essential expression of it, and even at its essence, Mars is something that has to be balanced with Venus, and also has to be balanced with Saturn and all the other planets in order to have a harmonious expression of the nature of the planet in question. I'm just going to turn off my phone. Just a little bit distracting. Now, the fiery-natured person. Here we go. This comes from Ernst Wilhelm's Graha Sutras. That's this book right here. Let me just make sure that y'all can see it. Graha Sutras, Planets of Vedic Astrology by Ernst Wilhelm. I highly recommend it. It's really just the best book that there is, describing the essential nature of the planets. You can get a really, really good sense of these planets, which we all take for granted. I find in Western astrology especially. We think of the planet and it's like, oh, Mars is red. Duh. So it's got like a red vibe. It's like angry and stuff. But there's just so much to each planet that the Vedic philosophy has like fleshed out for like 3,000 years, you know. So I highly recommend this book by Ernst Wilhelm. What he does is he takes a line from the sort of original sage that described these things, Parashara, Brihat Parashara. He takes a line from this old Vedic text, and then the smaller text is his own commentary describing what it means. So, the fiery-natured person is disturbed by hunger, moving to and fro, heroic, lean, filled with knowledge, eating excessively, sharp, fair-bodied, and is opinionated. Comes from Brihat Parashara, Horashastra, Results of the Five Elements, line 6, verse 6. Now, this is Ernst Wilhelm breaking all this down. So, this is a person ruled generally by Mars, or the Sun. The individual with the fire element dominating has a very fast metabolism, and so they're hungry, though they eat a lot. This is a person who's kind of like high-stakes poker in a way. You got to spend a lot, but you can get a lot back. You know, it's the nature of these people. They maintain a lean body unless there are other metabolic disturbances. They're also hungry to do, to act, and perform. And though doing more than the average person, they remain hungry to do more, and they rarely stop to indulge in their successes before venturing forever onwards. It's the nature of these people. Scorpio, Leo, and Aries, you know? It's like if things are doing bad, to them, it's like, well, that's to me, that's irrelevant to the fact that I'm just doing what I got to do, and that's just bingo, bang. The general is just getting some direct from the king or another, you know. This is Mars in its best expression. Again, if you have, you know, if you've got these, if you're ruled by the Mars, bleh. If you're ruled by Mars and you have an ugly Mars or an ugly sun, it might mean that you've got this hunger to do a lot, to do great things, and to just keep venturing forwards, but you might not be able to. You know, you might have, like, Saturn might have broken your leg when you were young, or, you know, like, something might have happened that obstructed your capacity to express this hunger to move forward. But it'll usually be there no matter what. If you've got a weak Mars, if you've got a weak sun, but it's in any of these signs, you're still going to have this essential nature coming through. You just won't be able to express it. Now, fire spurs these people forwards, and thus grants them courage where others may fear or hesitate to go. And thus the individual is heroic. Being spurred forwards also causes them to be sharp and poignant in nature. The fire-dominated individual is very intelligent and knowledgeable, oftentimes surprisingly more so than their haphazard to and fro manner would suggest. Mars is a planet of logic. You know, they say Mars makes a good mechanic. They know what needs to be done in a car, and they know how to do it efficiently and in the proper order, you know. Fire, however, they're intuitive and logical, and so these individuals quickly learn anything that they put their minds to. Being intelligent and fired up, these individuals are strong-minded and often opinionated. Fire tends to lighten the complexion, and thus these individuals are generally more fair-bodied and thus more sensitive to the sun. Having plenty of fire within themselves, they require less heat and fire from the sun. Now, as we know, we've read about the snake, and the snake enjoys their time out in the sun, so lots of things to consider in regards to something like that. I'm a Scorpio sun, and it's my Leo. I'm a Leo rising, and so the sun is my first lord, so I have a lot of energy going through Scorpio, and that might make you think, I guess, from reading this, that they require less heat and fire from the sun. And I guess I do, but I am fucking bonkers crazy about the sun. I will just get more than I need if I have the choice and the chance. Now, this is a description of how the planets relate with each other through the 5 Pancha Tattva essences. This is kind of the whole thing that I've been talking about here. The 5-pointed star being an expression of an auspicious symbol of the human character confidently looking upwards. That's the spiritual sort of rendition of the 5-pointed star. And the Chinese astrology even has like a similar thing to this. Excuse me. And we can see that the generative cycle goes sort of this way. The arrows that are pointing... Oh, blah, got burps. The arrows that are pointing at cross sections to each other, this represents an important cycle of supporting and nurturing. What this means is that Jupiter supports Saturn, Saturn supports Mars, Mars supports Venus. And it also goes backwards, too. Mars gets a lot out of Venus, as we're going to read as we come along. Yeah. Now, Saturn gives Mars... If you're this Mars person, being Leo, Scorpio, or Aries, it would be good for you to have a strong Saturn, because Saturn gives you a sense of doing your duty sort of no matter what. if you've got a strong Saturn and anything Saturnine happens in your life, it will give you a deep sense of satisfaction. Right. Okay, yes. So Mars has lots of energy, vital, pent-up energy that it wants to express. And it wants to express it in a way that is like meaningful and has a sense of duty behind it. Mars won't always do that if it doesn't have, if there's a weak Saturn in the chart, but the chart is ruled by Mars, like you guys are, that would mean that the Mars person does not have the holding power to hold a job. They won't have the holding power to hold a family or a relationship, or they won't have the holding power to just hold a career for themselves. You know, Saturn is that 10th house career thing. So if you've got a weak Saturn, or if you've got weak things happening to your 10th house, then it means that you're going to have a hard time having a channel to express your Mars energy, right? Like I said, Mars does best in the 10th house. The 10th house is above the horizon, where the public, can see what Mars is doing and keep pushing and edging it on. Mars does well in the 10th, and Mars is also exalted in Capricorn. Consider the meaning of this. It's very interesting. If Mars is in Capricorn, it means the energy is going to be expressed through jobs and through careers and through checks from a boss, and the Mars will constantly be patted on the back for its good job and its feeling of doing a satisfying duty. That's Mars at its highest expression in Capricorn or in the 10th house. So when you have a weak Saturn, I mean, if Mars is there, it's still going to rock and roll with things. But if you have a weak Saturn, it's going to show that you are kind of incapable of holding on to that duty for its own sake. You know, of doing what you need to do. You might have all this pent-up Mars energy, and you might just go to the gym and just get it out, express all that Mars energy. Or you might be a very sexual person, especially if this is coming through Scorpio and Leo too. You might have all these sexual conquests that you've found to be a way to express your Mars. And you might not ever hold on to one partner. Saturn is a deeply, it's a holder of Mars, as we can see here. Saturn holds Venus in a lot of ways. So if you got a weak Saturn, you probably won't have one sexual partner. You'll probably have several who are just these eternally unsatisfying channels for the expression of your Mars, because you're not holding anything for a longer period. Mars person will want to express that, and they'll feel good about expressing it in the moment. But then they'll walk away from that little fling, and they'll go away, and the Mars will feel like, yeah, I really made that person feel my energy. Not just for a man, but for a woman too. A woman with a weak Saturn, but is ruled by Mars, might think that they've got every man's eye in town, and they might just feel happy about it. But deep down, they'll be wishing that they had something worthwhile and meaningful to chain themselves to. Saturn's a funny thing. We think of it as being this chain, this like harsh reality that we got to deal with, but it is one of the 5 Pancha Tattvas. And if your Saturn is not in balance with all of these things, you're going to be wishing that you had something to chain yourself to. And this is important for everybody, not just for Mars people, but that's a lesson that everybody can take. Saturn is the planet of greatness in Vedic astrology. It's often expressed as that. And you really won't go anywhere if you have a sense of that. Something in reality, when you have a strong Saturn, something in reality will force you to keep moving forward, to have a job, and you will feel compelled to say, yes, Saturn, I will keep going forward in this thing so that everything will come through better. Even if it's some crappy job. It's not about the money. Mercury is more about making money. Saturn is just about, like, you've got basic needs that you've got to take care of, and, you know, do them. You know, don't waste your energy on other things that are not conducive to that basic bare bones reality of what you need. You know, Mars is very ambitious and has lots of ambition to express. And if it doesn't have, like, the basic financial pool that holds it, you know, Saturn, the dutifulness, it's not really even about the money. It's about the cultivating the neurological habit of being in a constant motion. That's like Saturn, you know, it's just limping towards its destination if it has to, you know. If you don't have that, then your Mars is going to it's not, when the time comes for Mars to express an opportunity, it's not going to feel a sense of duty. It's not going to have that neurological habit of dutiful work. So it's probably just going to be like, I could do this hard job right now, or I could go to the gym. I feel much better about that. Or I could go for a run. Fuck it, you know, or I could go to the bar and I'll be satisfied. But you won't be satisfied in the long run. Dashas. Oh yeah, so, you know, the expression of your Mars and your Saturn and your Venus and all these things might be curtailed if you're in a certain dasha period. Dashas are ways of amplifying all 5 of these planets, so that if you're too much of that planet, the dasha of that planet, or the one preceding and succeeding it, is going to teach you how to use that planet in balance. So if you've got a weak Saturn, and if you're a Mars Pancha Tattva person, if you've got a weak Saturn and you come into your Saturn period, it's going to teach you, it's going to force you in a gross way, probably a way that you're going to hate. It's going to force you, like, you're going to come to the bottom of your luck cycle. You're gonna run out of get out of jail free cards, and Saturn is gonna come along in some form. It could be the fact that, you know, like, you've got a family and you've been sort of doing this job that you want to, or various little things that make you a little bit of money, and you've just been riding on your luck and on your Mars expression and your willpower. Something will come along and say, it's not enough for you to just express your willpower into this one thing. You have to have some kind of job, some kind of duty that keeps you diligently moving towards some kind of goal. Small goals. They don't have to be big. They just have to be something. Your Saturn Dasha period will, like, lay it on thick. And if you don't, then your, like, kids are going to starve, or you're going to, like, you know, if Saturn rules, like, your 6th or 12th house, it might give you, like, an illness or a disease that you've got to take care of. And if you're like, I don't care, I just want to, you know, if you've got some internal disease happening because of Saturn or whatever, let me just check if you guys are good. If you've got some internal disease happening that you're so full of Mars that you're like, I don't want to deal with what's back there because it doesn't matter. What matters is the energy that I put out through this thing, whatever that might be. You know, you could be an internet personality like me, and I'm a Mars guy. Like I said, I got Sun conjunct Mars in Scorpio, with Pluto there too, actually. Lots of energy being compressed and squeezed into Scorpio, Sun, Mars. So I got a strong Saturn, thankfully, and I'm a yoga guy. And I make very sure, no matter what, no matter how much I want to come on the internet with you guys and say, hi, I'm doing this thing, and express all this logic and all these things, I make sure my body's healthy. I make sure my basic emotional needs are taken care of, mostly. I've got a strong Saturn, and so I really am more concerned with the bottom feeling that everything is secure than me coming on here and expressing my art and all my power and all my Mars willpower, you know? Now, if I had a weak Saturn, I might not take care of my body as much. And then when the opportunity comes for me to be here with you guys and to express the Mars that I have in my capacity, if I had, like, a disease or just, like, you know, something wrong with me, the opportunity would be here for me to express my Mars, but then I would be like, I'm really enjoying this, I'm really enjoying doing this presentation, but I've got to like go and throw up for like 5 minutes, and then I'll come right back and then I'll be fine, you know? And it starts to get in the way of your Mars expression if you don't deal with your Saturn, whether it's your health, you know, whether it's like your basic financial situation. I couldn't be doing this with you guys if I didn't have a regular job, right? So, if Saturn is weak, there will be a poor sense of duty and a greater consciousness of lack, a feeling that there's lacking, that I don't have enough. And this will disturb Mars, who will be unfocused, with many desires to fulfill. Mars is supposed to be this noble, like, gun filled with ammo, and it can consciously use it in the right way if everything is kind of going along ideally in the right way. I'm not a guns guy or whatever. I'm just, using the metaphor of Mars here. So if Saturn has a lack of that sense of proper duty and coming along and that greater sense of lack, the Mars will be unfocused. They'll have a million desires to fulfill, and the Mars person will squander their energy and abilities while being angry, forceful, and opinionated in attempts to change the world. That means to fulfill the lack of Saturn instead of performing the disciplined activity that Mars is meant to perform as a part of duty. Mars's abilities come best when they're an expression of Saturn's dutifulness, Saturn's realism, Saturn's sense of what the world really needs. If you don't have that connection to the world and the connection to the greater needs of the world, you're going to have all this Mars, and you're going to think, the world is not listening to me, so I've got to change the world. I got to melt the girders of the world to make me happy. And that's when these people get like people in their lives who are yes men, who say, yes, Mr. or Mrs. Mars, yeah, you're going to yell at me if I say no, so yeah, rock and roll. And everyone becomes afraid of them. And then they never get to face a satisfying expression of their Mars, of their willpower, because everything becomes like so under their will that they don't have anything to fight back against. That's something that happens to Mars people if they don't have a strong Saturn. Now, in regards to Venus really like pours water on the hot metal, on the hot reactor after it's expressed itself. Mars's efforts provide Venus's self-contentment, satisfaction, and comfort in its own virtue and character. So this is more like if you've got, if you're in a Venus dasha, I'm in my Venus dasha right now, actually, and I get a lot of expression, satisfying expression. Like, again, I just love to talk about things this way. These videos are a very Venus thing. It's Venus in the sense that, I do this for my own love. I've got all this knowledge about these astrology books and this stuff, and I just love to do it. But when you look at me, it's not just Venus coming through. It's a whole lot of Mars. I have to set up this video at 4 p.m. I set it up a week before so that everybody knows that I'm going to be here at this time, and I'm diligent about it, I mean, like, at 4 o'clock, I was realizing my audio was a bit screwed up, and I was like, maybe I should cancel the video. But, of course, that flashed through my mind for a second. Then I said, nope, Mars wants to express. And so I just had to figure out my audio. Hopefully it's okay. Hopefully you guys can still hear me okay. And once I got all my stuff figured out, the logical Mars figured it all out. And so, because I'm in my Venus dasha right now, as I see it, I'm being given the opportunity to do these videos. Since I have a strong Mars, Mars makes my Venus feel satisfied. So that at the end of this, I can crack a beer and smoke lots of weed and feel satisfied that Mars did something with its willpower that was noble and meaningful. Right? So I'm in a Venus period right now. These periods are very important, by the way. For me, since I got into Vedic astrology, the dasha periods are something that have been like my deepest inspiration as an astrologer and as someone who can help people with knowing where they are in their lives. It's helped me know where I am in my life in a very deep way, in a way that I would never have known if I only stuck to Western astrology. So keep this in mind. If you want to learn about your dashas, the dasha means time period in a way. So if you want to know what planetary time period you're in, I recommend going on to Vault of the Heavens. Look up Vault of the Heavens on Google. Look up, it's a thing run by Ryan Kirkzak and Ernst Wilhelm. They'll give you a breakdown of your dasha period that you're in right now. Well, they won't give you a breakdown, but they'll tell you what period you're in if your birth time is correct, because the birth time is important to it. It has to do with where the moon was, where you were born, in the nakshatras. So that was a good little expression of Mars, you know. I should say that if you're a Mars person, it'll be good for you to have a strong Venus too. Because, well, Mars will help your Venus be what it needs to be. It's possible that you could burn yourself out with all of your Mars activity. And if you don't have Venus to kind of give you a different level of satisfaction, it's like a worldly connect with other people, a relationship with other people. If you've got a weak Venus and you're this very strong Mars person, especially if you're like ruled by the Mars Pancha Tattva, but you've got something wrong with your Mars or your Sun, you'll have a hard time. You'll have all this pent up energy and you'll have a hard time expressing it because of your messed up Mars or your messed up Sun. And we all have moments, even if you've got strong Mars, strong Sun, we all have moments where it's tough for us to express our Sun energy and our Mars energy. And at those times, Venus can help you. If you have connections to family, to people, or to a movie that you love, art, sensual pleasures can, when used in the proper way, help to ease your seething Mars desires after and before and during you've expressed them. Gives you like a cushion, a pillow. Because as a Mars person, you might be driving Aries like head first into things, and you've got the eternal, constant energy to do so. But you might feel young and vital, and you might feel like you're invincible. But if you're not eating healthy, Venus thing. If you're not taking care of your body, also kind of a Venus thing. If you're not openly willing to accept that you have limitations and that your body is this ultimately still fragile thing, even though you've got lots of vitality, by the time you're 50 or 60, you'll be worn out if you don't have a strong Venus, or if you don't take care of yourself and your emotions in this regard. So just keep that in mind. The Sun is like your mission in life. It's the solar system center whose energy powers your chart. Now, the Pancha Tattva ruler of the Sun sign can tell you much about yourself and what activities you tend to involve yourself in. This is particularly, I say this because anybody who's watching and is not looking at this video for the Sun, you'll still get a lot out of it. But I like to make the point that the Sun is its own thing. Now, the Sun in active signs, it's fire and air signs, these are more proactive and outgoing towards their Pancha Tattva directive, towards Mars. So if you've got Leo Sun or Aries Sun, you'll be more active, you'll be more out in the world, you'll probably be, it's less about endurance, it's less about making deep connections with people, and it's just more about making constant connections and just constantly wheeling and dealing. If the Sun is in passive signs, in this case, this is Scorpio. This is what I'm trying to say is that Scorpio, Leo, and Aries are all ruled by the Mars Pancha Tattva, the fire Pancha Tattva. But Scorpio, while its desire is still to express this satisfaction, still to express these desires and this willpower like I am as a heavily Scorpio person. Like when I do these videos, I'm wanting to win, like I want to do the thing very well. And it makes me feel satisfied to know that I am. But it's Scorpio. It's patient. It's enduring. You know, I've got this video series. I got like 48 video. No, I got more than that. I got like 55 or 54 videos left to do. It's a long haul. And I'm expressing that willpower through patience, endurance, and depth regarding the themes of Mars, you know? So just keep that in mind when you're thinking about the fact that even though Scorpio is a water sign, it's still ruled by Mars. That's what I'm trying to get at with these videos, talking about the nature of the Pancha Tattvas. Now, with all of that being said, glad you guys are still here with me. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to start getting into how the snake, as a Chinese sign, with all that's entailed there, relates to these fire signs of Aries, Mars, and Leo. There's lots of willpower in the snake, there's lots of mysticism in the snake, and there's lots of endurance in the snake. So I'd say these are going to be a compatible reading. I'd say, generally speaking, the snake and the Mars Pancha Tattva are probably going to be a good pairing. I'm just looking up our comment section here. Blah, blah, blah. I'm looking up our comments to see if anybody's mentioned anything that might contribute to our conversation. Okay. Cool. Okay. I'm just gonna take a peek here at any key points. Canadians are sure polite, eh? Oh yeah, the free healthcare, yeah. Oh, nice, cool. Yep, that's you, Goosey. Leo Sun and a few planets in Sagittarius. Nice, creepy kitten. Like gardening. Nice. I like playing dress up too, to be honest with you. I could play dress up all day. Mars and Capricorn, wonderful. It's a good place. 5 planets, Virgo, double Mercury, Venus, and Scorpio. Year of the Fire Rooster. Cool. Venus and Scorpio. Hi, Katrina. Nice to see you again. Scorpio rising conjunct Pluto. How do you know if you're in your Venus dasha? As I said, creepy kitten, I think that the best way to learn how I do it, different astrologers, the Ayanamsha thing is a whole thing. When you get into this layer of astrology and Vedic astrology, it's easy to get lost because the unfortunate truth is that astrology is a harder thing to measure than we've given it credit for a long time. A lot of the Vedic people go by what we call sidereal rashis, sidereal astrology. The dasha points come from the sidereal points of what's called the nakshatras, and those are the lunar mansions. The nakshatras are not connected to the rashis, in my opinion, at all. That's an opinion that's very controversial, and it's highly disputed in the world of astrology. So far as I understand it, that what I just said, which is that the sidereal nakshatras, the power latent in the positioning of the stars, are not related to what we call the signs, the Western signs, the rashis. So even though we look in the sky in Aries and we see a goat, there's not really a goat there. We just, in ancient times, we knew that if the sun is in that place, the personalities of the people who are born when the sun is in that star position express the quality and character of a goat-like creature with the ram, the Aries. So we said, well, as a sign, as a guidepost for us knowing the nature of that sun energy, let's imagine that that star cluster is a goat. So they didn't look up there and say, oh, it's a goat. maybe that's what the nature of people are going to express. It's the other way around. They knew that Aries people born when the sun is there express the nature of a goat or a ram, and so they said, let's just say that that star cluster is a goat, a ram. Now that's my interpretation. The sidereal Vedic people say that it is called a goat for a reason. So that's like a whole thing. What I will say to answer your question, I should have just gone right to it and said it like I did. If you want to look up your Venus Dasha, I recommend going on Vault of the Heavens on Google. And it will show you somewhere there the Mahadasha period. It's like on the bottom, not on the bottom, but it'll be on the right and up on the page that it gives you there. I also recommend, Vic Dakara also has great chart readings. I love Vic Dakara. But Vic Dakara's Ayanamsha will be different. Vic Dakara describes a different dasha period than Vault of the Heavens does. In my opinion, I've done them both, and Vault of the Heavens is closer. So, I don't know which is the right one. But in my experience, Ryan Kirksack and Ernst Wilhelm's research seems to hit my personal experience of my periods closest to the mark. I hope that helps you, creepy kitten. It's a tough thing to talk about. I don't want to talk about it too much here because we're here for a specific reason, but I do like to answer these questions when I can. Check out Vault of the Heavens on Google if you want to know what your dasha period is. And try to have your birth time quite accurate. You have to have the exact birth time, basically, if you want to get anywhere close to the real date of your turning dasha periods. You can look up the dasha periods on YouTube, and there are other astrologers that are talking about it in plenty. And as for anybody else who wants to make a comment, if you're watching live, feel free, and I'll try to get at your questions as much as I can. Now, feel free to pause and read, but this is essentially saying that, I guess I'll make this point this way. Before we get there, now we're going to start talking about Chinese astrology. We're going to start talking about how the snake, the mystical, sensual, sexy, and quite beautiful, but also hardworking and hard-resting character of the snake relates to Aries, Leo, and Scorpio. Before we do, I would like to say, as I always do with these videos, that there is no science for how Western astrology and Eastern astrology comes together. There's no written script for how they're supposed to go together. We, as New Age astrologers, have to read into the qualities of the Chinese characters and see how they are. Think about the essential themes of the snake and see how they might complement or contradict the nature of the Western sun signs that we're talking about. And each of them complements, the snake complements each of these three characters in different ways. And we're going to talk about the Leo snake, we're going to talk about the Aries snake and the Scorpio snake at the end of this video. But the snake does complement the essential nature of the Mars rulership that we've been talking about. In terms of the snake, it talks about them, it lends something to this rulership of Mars. And what we look for when we do a reading like this, where we talk about two different cultural strands. The Chinese astrology is just a different cultural strand than Vedic tropical astrology. So when we do a reading like this, we have to consider that even my interpretations is me as a YouTuber doing what I can with the best of my knowledge to combine the themes of these two symbols and seeing where they might represent certain facts and figures of data. But it's me kind of playing darts a little bit and hoping that they land in the right place, because that's all we have. That's what we're doing in these videos as modern astrologers, bringing together cultural strands that have never been brought together until today. So always keep that in mind. There's no science to how the snake works with Aries, Scorpio, and Leo. They're two completely different metaphysical fields. But there are points of confluence, meaning where the themes of the Chinese character relate to the Western character. So the snake is hardworking, just like these three are. The snake is ruled by its yang fire. So there are some thematic similarities between and complementary factors of the snake with Aries, Leo, and Scorpio. But what I will say for this character is that when life is really good for the Leo snake, Aries snake, Scorpio snake, when life's good, it's really good, and they know how to enjoy it very well. But these people are, both signs, the snake and Mars, are full of bluster, full of desire and ambition. And if they can't express it, they'll probably be very angry people. It's like the bigger they are, the harder they fall kind of thing. Now, if you are a snake, Leo, or Scorpio, or Aries, and if your Mars is in a bad place, if you've got a debilitated Mars, if you've got anything wrong with your Mars, the snake will exacerbate and amplify and magnify your frustration at not being able to do what your Mars wants to do. Same thing with if you got a rough sun happening. The snake will be equally as desirous as your sun and your Mars to express itself with ambition and nobility, and to be seen as doing well in whatever its field is. It'll only extremify that and amplify it if it's not going well. But if you know how to point your nose on the grindstone and towards the right direction, you'll have extra ambition to get where you want to go. It's like this is a potent bomb. So if you put it in the wrong place, it'll go very wrong. But if you put it in the right place, it has the potential to go very right. That's what I'll say about this particular combination. So when you read this, consider the same thing. That, when a factor or dynamic is emphasized in the Chinese reading, and a similar factor is emphasized in the tropical horoscope, this is called confluence, right? And it's at these points which we can effect the greatest constructive transformations in the neurological field of the body and the mind. So everything in astrology should be patiently meditated upon in the full context of the self-realization totems which guide your path. You might have other things in your chart. You might think just because you've got Sun in Aries that Mars and all these themes are the most important things to you, but it might not be. You might have other much deeper chart aspects that really run you. And so that's what I call a self-realization totem. It's like whatever planet has the most effect on your neurological energy field is a planet which you can practically, logically grasp and deal with to make big changes in your life. And you probably should. That's what I call self-realization. Now, the science of Ba-Zi, or Chinese astrology, give me one sec. Here we go. Now, as the science of Ba-Zi, or Chinese astrology, is quite new and untouched in the history of Western esotericism, and even in the Vedic tradition, no one, only the Chinese got into the astrology defined in Ba-Zi in Chinese astrology. Chinese astrology has so much to offer us. There's so much more than just the sign of the snake going on in your chart. I'm just knocking out and marking out the nature of the snake in relation to these things, but there's so much going on in your Ba-Zi chart. So that's why I'm careful to note my sources. This is a legit astrology that I think the world needs to know about. And so, as with anything, it's important to note your lineage and to note your resources and sources. There are several people doing Chinese Bazi and astrology. Joey Yap, I'm recently a fan of. And I also like Mantak Chia's work. They can all be different, and sometimes they just deal with different data. It's the frustrating thing about astrology is that how different people interpret the symbols differently and express different life paths differently, even though it's the same astrology. Western astrology is the same thing as we just talked about. Vedic, sidereal, Western, all different ways of describing the same data that's in the stars. So the backbone of my data and my readings comes from Master Zongxing Wu, whose writings have been blessed by the president of the Chinese Taoist Association, Grandmaster Ren Farong. I actually went and saw this fellow and got my book signed by him, I'm so happy to say. This is Master Zongxing Wu's book, Tiangan DZ. It's the Heavenly Stems and Earthly Branches. A very important text for anyone wanting to know about the 10 gods and the essence of the nature of the Chinese signs and everything that has to do with them. So he wrote this book. It's one I highly recommend. His wife also wrote, that's Dr. Karen Taylor Wu, Calculating the Bazi, the Ganzi Chinese Astrology Workbook. I highly recommend this one because that actually tells you how to calculate the chart and like what each figure means. You can't really know what each figure deeply means in Chinese astrology unless you like survey it and survey the process of how it's calculated. Even more true in Chinese astrology, I would say, than in the Western astrology. I've really never even gotten out an ephemeris and done a Western chart, but I have marked out all of my points in the Chinese astrology because you kind of need to know what it's all about. So that's sort of my lineage. But again, I've gotten into Mantak Chia and Joey Yap recently. So feel around. Those three names are the most pertinent to me as so far in my experience regarding the real Bazi chart, the Chinese astrology chart. It's Master Zongxing Wu, Mantak Chia, and Joey Yap. Check him out if you're more interested in this subject. Now we're going to talk about the 6 defining characteristics that make the snake what the snake is. We've already talked about how they work as hard as they play. They love to relax, but they really love to work hard even more. It's like they love that duality. It's like a snake going left and right. And they're just tuned in their body. Their body just knows that the left swoop is as important as the right swoop. They just know. They're one with that reality. If their energy expresses well. So the snake is as ready and willing to work hard as it is to rest. And if it's resting all the time, it'll get like pent up. It'll get frustrated and it will want to express something that's resolute, secure. What they really love more than anything is security, financial security, having the security to, toil up some wealth, coil up some energy, and then to expend it, They like to be amassing a solid, secure amount of wealth so that they can have fun and not only have fun, but also glorify themselves and their family name by expressing it efficiently and willingly. Snake is called the strategist. It's a yin number. It's a yin physical body. So it's less about like having a penetrating, punch through the wall type of perspective. It will cannonball itself towards a directive if need be, but it doesn't want to do that all the time. They do have this lackadaisy sort of like everything in its own time, and whatever has to happen I'm gonna get there, and when I get there, I'm gonna deal with what happens there when I get there. So they're a yin type, even though they express yang, summer, fire energy. I think of snake is opposite boar, and I've got a lot of boar energy, and I think of them as sort of this way: is that they're yin. They don't want to bombard the world all at once. They're more interested in having a consistent conduit. The snake is a thinker, and he's thinking about engineering a channel for him to open his energy mouth and express constantly and securely and in a diligent fashion as much energy as possible, as much of the heart going forward ambitious energy as possible. It's especially true of Aries, Leo, and Scorpio snake. Scorpio snake in particular. The Scorpio snake is a double serpent sign. So they are also engineering in the same way. And so is Leo. Leo's a fixed sign. Leo would love to a Leo snake will probably just love to engineer some job, some career for them, some activity, probably everything that they do. Even love making, playing music, having a wife, a woman that they love. Sorry, I'm trying to keep this PC transgender as possible. A lover, I should say. This is a serpent Leo woman will be very concerned with having a lover, or several lovers or whatever, having someone with whom they can constantly plan to have fun activities with, in a fixed channeled way. The Aries of the three groups of the serpent is probably the one most willing to sort of have a role and a job as a serpent, but not be too focused on having a certain set of skills or a certain role. The Aries will be many roles, but it will be, and the snake will identify as that person with many roles, an agent for whom they can powerfully, in a constructive snake-serpent way, go at many tasks in an Aries way, by the seat of their pants, and just by their own intuitive way of doing things. Now, the snake has these hidden stems too. We're going to talk a little bit about those. I feel like we'd be better off talking about them after, but essentially the hidden stems is hidden aspects of the snake. Its yang fire nature naturally expresses yang earth. They kick up a lot of dirt from burrowing in their fiery way into the earth and doing what they want to do. They burrow in, they're very ambitious, and they can be good enterprising people. They can be good at starting up businesses or getting in business with other people and being the ones who analytically think about the project, the product that they're making. That's the Wu Yang Earth sort of kicking in. And they're even willing to bump into competitors and just be Yang Earth is the center of Yang Earth is right around here. It's your spleen, pancreas, and stomach, really. And it rules the muscles in the body. Chinese astrology is always very much in the organ systems. So this is Yang Earth, Yang Fire, Bing. Yang Fire is the smaller digestive, the small intestines. So it's the thing that is constantly actually absorbing the food. So, Aries, Leo, and Scorpio sometimes might not be inclined to eat that much. Even though they're super hungry, they're whatever, I'll just have a coffee and get through it. This is somebody who should eat a lot. Lots of green leafy foods and stuff like that. So that they've got fiber going into their small intestines, because it's the small intestines that holds the energy for them to do the things that they want to do. So the snake, being Bing, Yang Fire, is ruled by the small intestines, and also, I would say, the eyes, I believe. Yes. Yeah, and then the heart is more about, the heart is, Yin Fire is more about the heart and the arteries. Yang Fire is about the things which hold your capacity to keep moving forward, and it's also the eyes. This is like an analytical personality. And the serpent, the snake, is the only yang fire animal in the circle. So the snake, more than anybody, can see further than anybody else in a way. I mean, if you've got strong fire, if you've got balanced fire in your chart, you'll actually have good eyes. But if you're a snake and if you've got like way too much fire, you might actually have bad eyes. Because the Chinese are all about balance like that. Now, this is a person with yang fire energy coming from the small intestines and expressing itself through yang earth. Yang earth is like the muscles and the body. So not only do these people endure, because they've got usually, hopefully, strong small intestinal tracts which absorb and metabolize food well, but these people also have yang earth, and they can punch through reality. You know, these people can, like when there's a competitor who's fighting the snake's, who's in competition with the snake's business, the snake will have the energy to keep pushing and being like, oh, you want to play like that, huh? Well, we got this new thing coming out, and we've got this, and like, oh, their company really isn't that great. Like, they are willing to push around like that. This also, the yang metal also contributes to this. Yang metal is more like large intestine. It's like in the legs. It's got strong bones and skin and looks beautiful. Yang metal can be diplomatic while also being hard and real and cutting. So, you know, the fire feeds the earth and the earth feeds the metal. And this is like a strong energy for pushing competitors out of the way and these sorts of things, and solidifying a place in a mutual business for these sorts of movements. The Aries, Leo, and Scorpio will be all the more willing to do this sort of pushing around and solidifying a place and slot and role for itself in whatever field it's going to get into. Now, so these are 6 defining characteristics that we're going to describe, are going to describe the nature of the animal in question today, the snake. Now, snake is its hour is 9 o'clock. It's coming up to like the top of the day, midday. Essentially, snake is really the most yang expression in this regard, even though the horse is really on top, and the horse is technically the most yang. It is. But the snake is like yang fire. The snake is the person who, they're not as good as at initiating things, but once a few, if they get in connect with, especially like, you know, like an ox, you know, ox is good, or any of these signs, snake and dragon do well, snake and tiger, any of these wood energy signs. If the snake gets in with them, the wood energy will be able to be resourceful, to know what's around the area, and to spot out and stake out a good place for the snake. Or, you know, the snake is the one in the metal triad who's a thinker, who will analyze and who will find out data about where it's going to set up its business and look way down the line to see that it will build into a successful business eventually, right? Now, the snake does good with dealing with wood people because the wood people give the snake data about those. The wood people will give the snake the data that it wants to think down the line about what would be a good business prospect or what have you. So the snake is like the flower. The wood is like the stem. The winter is like the root, you know, or like the soil itself. After whatever's come through is like dead now. Now the wood people are good at taking the old disassembled bits of the past, and the wood people are like a stem, which feels by its sort of like, you know, by its like nose, about how the reality is all around it, wood. And wood is a good initiating energy. Spring is starting things. Summer represents the flower of everything spring built up to. So snake's more of a summer energy, and snake will, once it finds a comfortable niche for itself, the snake will flower like crazy. And this might come through Aries, Leo, and Scorpio in the form of someone whose willful Mars is taking the open capacities of the business or of the career or whatever it is and using it to its furthest potential with the willpower that Mars affords. Now, even though it's so enduring and expresses so much energy, the energetic body of snake is yang. But this numerical order is a different thing. There's yang, the yang animals over here. The snake is in the yin, one of the yin triangles. It's a thinker. It doesn't just fly by the seat of its pants. Like, it's a yin animal. The reason that the snake has such an open cyclone for its energy is because it doesn't just jump on every opportunity that's thrown its way. The snake thinks deeply, 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 long and hard and diligently before it makes a move that it's going to commit itself to. And once it commits itself to it, it's put a lot of energy into thinking about it, so it's really gonna stick and climb towards that certain direction that it's going into. They're meticulous. They probably want to go to college and get a good stamp of approval from whoever in order for them to continue to have the medals and badges that they need to continuously move forward in their path. But they're meticulous about it. They're in the metal triad. They're in the they're in the thinkers triad. And they will think long and hard before they finally do, whatever the Aries, Scorpio, Leo compulsion for them to act and to climb something, they're really going to think deep about it. And they're going to, have friends who they love to think deeply about what is the hardest, most hard-edged way of doing whatever their will is. What is the deepest, hardest way? The people in the metal triad, that's ox, rooster, and snake, they're pretty tough. And they're like, they don't have any illusions about how the world, they're not idealistic. They don't think about how the world ought to be. They think, how is the world, and how can I take best advantage of it with the power and resources at my disposal? That's what all the people in the thinkers triad thinks. And the Aries, Leo, and Scorpio is kind of like that too. It's just like, well, show me the logic, and then like, how do I logically go about the goal of whatever it is that I've mentally thought through for a long time. That's very much this character. Now, this is the modality. It's not usually emphasized in Chinese astrology, but its effects are observable. The fixed animals, that's boar, snake, monkey, and tiger, they're all like in square to each other, and they can get along. They're actually, in certain ways, there's a best friend thing here. The boar and tiger are best friends, and monkey and snake are best friends. Monkey and snake are the one grouping which, even though they're best friends, they can still get in trouble with each other. They are the sort of like the least amicable of best friends, but it's still there. Monkey and snake can make an extremely powerful team. Now, it's because they're of the same nature, but in a different direction, that the squares like this often can get in trouble with each other. Snake and monkey do good because they're best friends, but snake and boar are awful. The snake will eat the boar because the boar will just... Eventually, the boar probably won't trust the snake because the snake is so hard about reality, and the boar's kind of a softie, and the snake just is like, look, if you're going to keep opening yourself for me to, take advantage of you, I'm going to do it, and I hope you're going to learn about it. And the boar will just keep saying he will learn that liberty and idealism is going to ultimately push life forward the best way. So the boar will just keep saying that this is just the way I am. And the snake will just read weakness in it. And the snake will not trust the boar. Not because the boar is not trustworthy, but the boar can't always be trusted to see the logical reality and the hard reality come through. The boar has so much support, though, that like it usually does okay anyway, because it gives so guilelessly of its heart. It has a lot of support, and much more support usually than the snake does, although for different reasons. The snake can have lots of support, but it's because the snake actually practically helps people. The snake will sit with you, think about your problems, and they won't just say, I'm here for you. They'll be like, well, you fucked that up, and you got to change that. Can't you see that? And people will respect the snake if the snake is actually wise and, you know, thinks about things in the proper way, right? So anyway, snake doesn't do too well with tiger, though. There's a square here, and they can get frustrated with each other's energy. They're both very enthusiastic about things, but the tiger is more enthusiastic in the realm of vitality and sort of liberty, where the snake is more tenacious in terms of like what is best for the group and the logical, rational thing going forward that'll give us the most wealth, that'll help us to have our coffers full so we can continue the onslaught towards what it is that we want to do. The tiger's more interested in like, the tiger's interested in that too, but it's more interested in like a body vitality and in art and sensuality. The tiger would be more interested in having everyone express their innate talents and to show concern for being interested in people expressing themselves at their heart nature. You know, the tiger is very much ruled by the heart in a way. Whereas the snake is like, it doesn't matter what everybody's best at, really. What matters down the line is what is the most logical positioning of all of our pawns in our chess game to make the game work the most efficiently. And the snake and tiger can get into arguments that way. But ultimately, the snake is an energetic yang. It's a fixed energy. Even though it's a yin animal, it's still energetic yang. It's a fixed energy, and the yang means it wants to express lots of energy through the way that it does. We're going to talk about whether this energy is helpful or complementary. And then this is the heaven stems, and we've already talked about those. So, you know, I would say that the serpent energy is really, it's pretty compatible with the Leo, Scorpio, and Aries energy. It is. It truly is. I guess I kind of said just the gist of it already, which is that the snake is very tenacious. It's very willful. It spends a lot of time thinking about opening a channel for it to express its energy through. And when it can do that, the Aries has the energy to carry it through. Whatever directives the snake's logic figures out, the Aries is going to be very concerned with like seeing if it's like true, you know, like I've thought about all these things. Now let me just get my hands in there and just bang, try this job, you know, or like try this connection with this business opportunity. And if it doesn't work, well, oh man, I can't wait to try the next one. You know, that's like Aries. Aries snake is a real tough cookie for sure. They can just endure and they learn. Not only do they endure, but they keep learning more about what they're doing, and they can change their perspective on who they are and their expectations of themselves. You know, they can change and maneuver according to the wisdom and data that comes ahead of them. Leo and Scorpio are more concerned with like having a picture of themselves for all eternity of how they can contribute to the world in this like fixed way. You know, Scorpio snake has like a mechanic written all over it. You know, someone who's just like got a car shop. They know all the people in town, and they make business connections with all the people in town. And a Scorpio snake will be very concerned with like you're my best customer. So what can I do for you? How can I help you? And, you know, like they'll be the kind of people that'll wink their eye and say like, you know, I'll give you this like for a special price. And they really will. You know, like, because they'll know, the Scorpio snake will know that Steve down the road is like doing this car part for this amount of money. And the Scorpio snake will come to you and say, oh, you went to Steve over there, huh? And he did it for that price, huh? Why don't you stick with me? Trust me, I'll make it worth your while. And I'll give you for this part cheaper, and the next time you come, ask me about it, and I will let you know, because I know the market, and I know that I will do it cheaper than this other person. So the Scorpio snake will be interested in making a fixture in the world for it to express this Mars and snake ambitious energy and this financial desire to accumulate. And they'll want to make it real solid, a nice conduit, a nice solid thing that they can just keep pushing through and building through. So Leo will be basically the same way, except that the Leo might not be so much as like a mechanic, although they might. A Leo might do something that's moved by the sun energy. A Leo might be more of like a salesperson, a business person of some sort, a person, a CEO in a company who's gotten to the top of a ladder and is now at the top and now has a little bit of moxie that they can move things around with. They'll learn all about what the company is, the company directives, the company policies, and how can they best express themselves with their willful energy through the company directive, you know? It's more the Aries that will be like, have many fingers and many pies, you know, like sow lots of wild oats, and one of them might stick, and they might just go fully forward with that, and they'll always be modulating and evolving it to fit the willful changefulness of the Aries. I'm just gonna check if we got any questions or anything. Okay, cool. No problem, creepy kitten. I'm glad that you enjoyed that little response there. Goosey, if you want to know what your rising sign is, you have to look up your chart. I would suggest, for example, Astrodienst. It's like a Germany site or whatever. You can also look it up on Cafe Astrology. There are several places where you can get a Western chart reading. I use Astrodienst. So it's like ASTRODIENST.com. Or you can look it up on Google, and if you don't get the spelling right, it always comes up on Google when you look for it. Now what you want to do in there is that you'll look in the top left corner and it'll say like free charts. What you have to look up, Goosey, is something called your natal chart. So you can go on Google and look up natal chart, free natal chart, free Western natal chart. Look up on Google. You'll find the place where you can look up your natal chart. I wish I had, yeah, just give me one sec. I just want to show you this, Goosey, just because you asked specifically. This is the chart of a friend. I'm showing you this because this person has their AC. You can see that the AC, it's not past 30, which means that the AC, that's the ascendant. The AC is at like 26 degrees of Scorpio. That means that this person is a Scorpio rising. So when you look at this chart, Goosey, you look on the left of the chart, the left side most, and you look for something called the AC. And it's this thicker line here. And that's sort of like the horizon point of the chart. And that's how you know what your rising sign is. The rising and the ascendant are the same thing. Cool. Glad you asked, Goosey. You can always feel free to ask me these things. Especially because you're always my one viewer who is always with me on these shows, no matter what. And I love you for it, Goosey. Now I'm just going to spark up a little bit of incense. Keep things all mystical and shit. Yeah. And our next thing, we are going to talk about what is called the triad. The snake, all of the Chinese animals are in what's called a certain triad. And the triad is something that all three of the animals in your triad, it's kind of like the triads of Western astrology. You know, there's three of each element. You know, Virgo, Capricorn, Taurus, that's a triad. Well, the Chinese astrology have these triads as well. Now, the snake's triad, as we can see here, good. The snake's triad is in the triad of the metal types. So it's rooster, snake, and ox. All three of those are ruled internally by the metal element. That's what affords them this thinking, analytical capacity. Now, in certain Western translated texts, the harmony triads are incorrectly labeled due to an improper inference from the signs that correlate with the Western zodiac. You know, there was a time, you read a lot of things like, we're going to read from one of the books, for example, a book by Theodora Lau. This one, the Chinese Horoscopes one by Theodora Lau and Laura Lau. They talk about the triads as coming from being correlated with the Western signs. So, for example, ox, in a way, correlates with Capricorn. Snake, in a way, correlates with Taurus. Because it's like when the sun is in Taurus is when the Chinese month of the snake kind of arrives. They don't exactly happen at the same place, but it's the same vibe. This is an incorrect correlation. The snake does not have an earth energy. I mean, it does, but when we think of Taurus as being an earth sign, we do not think of the snake as being an earth sign. It's something very important. It's just a little mistake that happened when Westerners started trying to translate the Chinese astrology. They tried to translate it in a way that makes sense to people who are familiar with the Western zodiac, but the correlations are incorrect. The following represents the correct inference sourced from my lineage preceptor. It's Master Zongsheng Wu. Master Zongsheng Wu, in this book, let me just, again, I like to really note my sources. Master Zongsheng Wu talks in this book about the essential nature of the animals and of these triads. He gives you deep insights into the nature of these triads in that book. And it's really just like the best. So that's where I get my correlations from. And then the reading itself of that nature comes from another book. This is from Theodora Lau's The Chinese Horoscope Guide to Relationships. Her description of this triad, the thinkers, is still on point. The partners in your shared harmony triad, for the snake, that's rooster, snake, and ox. These represent people who are psychically building the same kind of feng shui social network that you are. So these people tend to harmonize well with you. Rooster and ox do well with the snake. Your social styles and interests tend to be their preferred style also. I would say particularly when it comes to analysis, being hard and realistic about the world, almost like taking your emotions out of it. Although these people can be emotional and sentimental, but they're very hard-edged. The snake is hard-edged about emotional realities, and they will never let emotions get in the way of business. And they love the ox because ox is the same way. Snake and ox will see that each other's emotions are important, and they'll even think about it in terms of you've got to be who you are for your family. It's important. Snake will say to ox, we've got to get this business going on. And, it's important. Whatever is happening in the business is important. And the ox will say, okay, good. I know that you have a family and that your family's emotional concerns are important to our business. And the snake will say, thank you for being impartial and objective to that. And then when the ox says, we've really got to do this on this day, even though your son's got this recital that you really want to go to, it would just work best for all of us in the long run, logically, if You come to work on this day and help me sell this to this other fucking client. The snake will say, yes, if this is better for everybody, it sucks that I'm hurting, emotionally denying being there for my son for this thing. But if it's going to be better for everybody logically in the long run, then I'll come to work that day and do that thing. The point is, the Leo and Aries and Scorpio in the snake might be like, no, I'm going to stay here for my son's thing, So there's always context to consider. But the point is that ox and snake are okay with talking with each other in an objective way, to look at the emotional realities and see what is best for both of us in the long run. And they'll communicate about it. And they'll love the way each other communicates about things in that sort of regard. Same thing with Rooster. Rooster's just, like, this is what we got to do. Here's the facts. The Rooster's the one with the checkerboard. These are some facts, and we have to accommodate ourselves to these basic bottom line facts in order for this thing to work. And Snake and Ox really appreciate that about the Rooster, just like showing like what is the spine that we cannot push ourselves further than this, So, Chinese astrology is all about building a social psychic feng shui network which grants you luck. The shared enjoyment of mutual space within your harmony triad brings out the luck and cosmic swing of the relationship. These are the primary grouping in Chinese astrology where behavioral psychology is concerned, meaning like these three are sort of very much tuned to the same psychological drum. They dance to the same psychological marching band, Now we're going to talk about that right this second. So we're going to talk a little bit about the thinkers, the metal triad. And this relates to the snake, the rooster, and ox, and how they can use each other's nature to help each other grow and to just feel confident with the presence of that other person in any situation. The second triangle of affinity is they're calling it the second. It's really arbitrary. They say the first one is the doers, the second is the thinkers, the third one is the protectors. It's the fire triad. But it's really arbitrary. There's no start. I think the only reason that they say the doers is the first triangle is because Rat is in it, and Rat is the first one. It's considered the first character in the Chinese cycle, and that's for a reason too. But that doesn't mean that the water triad, the rat, monkey, and dragon, it doesn't mean that they're like the best or first or anything like that. It's just arbitrary. The second triangle of affinity is made up of three pragmatic metal branches called the thinkers. These are the second, sixth, and 10th branches known as ox, snake, and rooster. People in this trio are purposeful and reflective and analytical in their thinking. They value intellectual prowess and didactic thinking. Not thinking emotionally or subjectively, but breaking things down into two pieces and digesting them. All three of these are gifted with superior intelligence and the ability to sort things out calmly. Rooster, ox, and snake are the planners and schemers who plot the course for others to follow. Personalities of this metal triad are noted for their thoroughness and steadfast dedication. Their perseverance and self-sacrifice will inspire others to perform above their ability. That's something very much the metal triad does, and they do it themselves first. They look and see how much they can push themselves, not thinking about their emotions, not thinking about anything. It's large intestine energy. These people are very much pushed along by. So it's like they take the large intestines take the initial shock of the food, and they can just do it whatever and just digest whatever's there, whatever it's got to digest before it gets into the small intestines. So these people can like stomach a lot, so to say. They're not ruled by the stomach, but these people can push themselves past their own limits and boundaries physically. They're tough people. And they can eschew emotional things for the sake of what's going to make them most emotionally happy and best and happiest down the line. Through their analysis is what brings them through. They're kind of they're thinkers more than they are reactors. As the visionaries of the cycle, these people are confident in their own analytical powers, and they will have a strong perception of how things could and should be done. Unswayed by public opinion, this triad is known to be unyielding and resolute in outlook, and they'll outwit or outmaneuver their opponents with their calm but formidable powers. What I'll say about these people is that they have a sort of they kind of go by the numbers in a certain way. They're very interested in thinking out the logical reality of the data coming through. They'll really mark out how the geometry of the physics of something works. And or in a business, they're really considering and thinking about the numbers in a business in a way. And how the numbers are reflecting on their analysis of how the business is supposed to go, or what the intention of the business is supposed to do. And so when, if a project is showing signs of failure, or if it's an idea that nobody can get behind, if they know that the numbers are all here, they have support from other stock investors, and they can show other stock investors that we have this much growth over this much time, and it's worth your money via, obviously, look at the data. It's worth your time and investment to invest in our company because we have proven through this thing that we're going to have progressive growth over time and that you will get your money back. This is the way these people's minds work. Even if others are doubting the numbers, these people will just, they'll be unyielding and resolute in their outlook and say, you just don't know. You just haven't thought this through, but I have. These are the most determined thinkers who will slowly but surely reach their goals by unwavering tenacity and constancy of purpose. This is relating to the snake very deeply. Snake is cool because they are a combination of fire. They're the fire branch. And the fire melts the metal in their own triangle. But they're in the metal triangle, and while they have strong, heartfelt ambition to let's not think too much about it. Let's just go. They have another side of their mind that says, nope, sorry, hold on. Before I get going and get going crazy about this thing, I have to think about everything deeply down the line and know if it's secure before I unleash this hard energy that wants to go out there so strongly. To work with the people in the metal triad, snake, oxen, rooster, one must learn to appreciate the snake's analytical and cerebral abilities, and to appeal to their intelligence and their practical side. Show them how they will benefit in a rational, systemic, and well-thought-out plan. All contingencies must be addressed and provided for, as these are great believers in having other options. Give them lots of options. Give the snake lots of outs. If you want to ask them with all the big power and willingness and whatever they have going on, if it's in your interest to side with them, you have to show them that if this doesn't work out, there are plenty of escape routes. Because the snake, like the other two in this triangle, do not like surprises or sudden changes. And this says to consider the Pancha Tattva Lord. I'll say this first. Due to their strong dislike of failure or weakness, these people can be ruthless when thwarted or misled. The Aries, Scorpio, Leo combination here will dreadfully include and magnify that. So be careful to explain all the issues before embarking on any enterprise with this person, as these people will not forgive you if you leave loose ends or fail to anticipate all the possibilities. The snake wants to go forward with things, and if you come along and say, trust me, especially if you tell them, like, don't think too hard about it, don't think about the data, just trust me because I've won before and you can trust how good I am at this thing. If that should somehow convince them, and it comes through that in the end you failed and you didn't do everything that you could to make sure it didn't fail, you promise the snake Aries or the snake Leo or the snake Scorpio that this project, this thing that I'm offering you is going to make you better in the long run, but you have to invest in it. And I will make sure that everything goes through. And then they find out later that you did some lie, you did some stupid mistake, or you did something, you made an emotional reactive decision that fucked them over. These people will remember that forever. And the Aries or Leo or Scorpio in this person might even want to let you know about it. In a bad way, in a physical way. So in the end, these people, the rooster, ox, and snake, will depend on their own astute assessment of facts. And in decision making, they will opt to follow their heads rather than their hearts. In relationships, these people could be thinking about their hearts and seeing their heart connected to somebody, but the head factor is like deeply rooted in with all the people in this triad, but for the snake, for sure. Because the snake, the heart of the snake, has lots of love to give. It's like they metabolize the food in their small intestine and it builds up all this energy and this vital energy, and they want to express it with somebody, and they want to express it with somebody who they know down the line won't really, make them look bad or embarrass them or spend all their money, or, like someone who just isn't logical with things will really, they could really have the hots for somebody. They could really think that somebody is something beautiful and special, and these people have an appreciation for beauty, the snake. But if the snake ultimately sees even one thing that could curtail all of that, it's like they find a woman who's just I always say a woman, but let's say the snake finds a lover who's downright gorgeous, who is well-to-do in their own way, but who, like, occasionally, like, will have, like, a snap or something, or, like, they'll be, like, angry, or I don't know. I mean, I guess the snake could deal with that. But if there's anything like where like this person is like, like a cheater or something like that, or someone who, like a lover who is so beautiful that they might also get the eye of other people in town, the snake might see that. The snake is kind of like that too. They tend to be beautiful and everyone tends to love their energy. So I don't know, maybe they would see this nature in the other person and make a deal with them and say, like, we're both beautiful people. We all both have the capacity to be cheated on or to cheat. But the two of us together have a business relationship that is tied together. And I think it's in both of our mutual interests if we stay tied together. These people might even be big on marriage for this sort of reason. Although they'll be smart enough, they'll probably be smarter than to get married with someone who might go and cheat on them. But this is the kind of thing that I mean, is that like, it's like they get an apartment, a snake gets an apartment together with someone like this. And if everything else is all chill, then they'll say, we've got this mutual financial investment together here and I'm doing well in my business. So the snake will probably do that kind of thing, They'll say, there are plenty of lovers out there, but none of them will take care of you like I will, right? Especially like the Aries and Leo variety, I would say. Scorpio's more about like a heart thing. If the Scorpio feels like you're going to cheat on them, then there's probably this kind of thing won't go on. Even the Leo is prideful. The Leo would be probably deeply hurt if like their lover cheated on them. It's probably more the Aries that would be like, look, do what you want, just as long as you and I can have our fun together. Always consider it in the context, you know. The point is to show that the snake's deep interest is in an analytical, head-centered process of what could go wrong, or what could ultimately be very satisfying and right. You know, they're like objective about they're impartial and objective about their emotions. And what I wanted to say is that, you know, the snake does deeply dislike failure or weakness. And this is deeply exacerbated by Aries, Scorpio, and Leo. Scorpio could probably have more in a way. Scorpio doesn't mind somebody being weak necessarily, because then they can be the, come on, baby, I got you, you know. But in general, though, especially like if you wrong a Scorpio, they're going to remember it forever. Whether it was because you had a moment of weakness and like pointed the finger at the Scorpio and say, he made me do it, the Scorpio snake was like, okay, bye. Nice fucking knowing you. So all these three really will have this strong dislike of failure and weakness, and they can be ruthless when thwarted or misled. It's definitely true about this whole triad. It's particularly deeply true about the snake, especially if you mess with their business or their reputation. The Aries, Leo, Scorpio will find some way, and they're ego conscious. So they don't want to be seen as weak. Their reputation as a strong person is probably a big part of what gets them along in life. So if someone comes along and tries to make these people out to be weak or stupid, they'll be making sure that everyone knows that this guy is only saying it for this reason or whatever, you know. So that was a little bit about the metal triad and what the metal triad brings to the nature of the snake. The snake is deeply analytical, security conscious, emotionally objective thinker who's really just concerned with having an analytically thought out plan to live out a life that in each moment and each spot has wonderful satisfaction and warmth and sensual appreciation and pleasure and enjoyment promised the whole way through. That's really what these people are analytically trying to build and construct. Whoa! Don't want to do that. So, feel free to pause this and just digest what is being said here. I'm a Vedic astrology guy. You know, I always say that I wrote these a long bit back there, and this is just basically saying that it's hard to know what Chinese astrology means to the energy field. I would say Chinese astrology reflects the feng shui of one's relationship network and one's creative interpersonal aesthetic style. It's the feng shui of how they attract luck. It's a luck that comes, it's not a luck that comes from like their internal karma or their attitude. Feng shui attracts others of like mind. That's what Chinese astrology is all about. The luck of Chinese astrology and the elements and the symbols and everything is more about building up a social network which you can glide on with the ease of other people thinking in the same way that you do. Tropical astrology is more about who you are, who is the person that is going to meet those social circles. You know, it's like what time do you wake up in the morning and do what you're going to do? You know, what's your attitude towards life? When you're a snake and you go to see an ox person, you know, and you are the eye of the snake, but there's your whole karmic light and data, how the light of your awareness is internally guided through the past, through your childhood, through your ego development, towards your involvement with others. The Western chart is really the one that contains like the deep data seed. for how the snake personality looks through. You know, it's like you've got that Aries sun, and how your sun has been allowed, how your reality is attracted an open door for your Aries sun to express its solar light through, to impress the psychological impression of a person who's either confident or not confident in expressing these things, and building up on that nature, being supported in the development of the sun's nature. This is the personality who's going to come through, and they'll even, an Aries sun person who didn't get much support through life for whatever reason to express their Aries sun energy. They were too crazy or zany about it or whatever. When they finally get to the point where they're involving themselves with other social circles, other people, other energy fields, it's that Western chart shows every little bit of that. Through the dasha periods, through everything. The Western chart shows the psychological personality that's been building up and now meets the world of Chinese astrology. And so the Aries sun person, no matter how their psychological childhood came through, they now look out and see what kind of groups can I attract myself to help me express the energy that I'm trying to express and everything. They're really tied together. The Chinese astrology is affecting you as you go through your childhood as well. In Chinese astrology, we go through these 10-year Da Yun periods, which means if you're going through a Da Yun period where you're slotted to meet important people who are going to help you along the way in your life, then it might be easier for the Aries to express itself properly because it's got friends who are like, Leo roosters, or like someone else who can pat you on the back and say, you're doing the right thing, man. Like, this is how I like to react to reality. And, like, don't worry about the fact that your son that you didn't make that school grade. You're trying, and that's all you can do. If you have good friends coming from your Chinese astrology luck, then it's going to help your Western astrology to come along. And to be fair, I would say that that's probably all written in your Western astrology. So it's all really wrapped up like that. There's a duality, there's a difference, but they're really one. So the Tropical Astrology says, who are you when nobody's around? What is your will outside the context of interpersonal dynamics? What is your spiritual purpose for being here? In a lot of ways, is the Western chart says that. Although Chinese astrology knows that the journey is just as important as the destination. It might even be said that your will, your true will, is a part of how you deal in interpersonal dynamics. So don't think of them as one being more important to the other, one standing on the other. Just think of them as one integrated unit. That's how I like to think of them. We've already talked about the dashas, so feel free to pause this and consider the nature of how Mars relates with Venus, and then feel free to pause this to consider the nature of how Saturn relates with Mars. We've already kind of talked about it. I just always like to put it at the end. And now we're going to talk about what other authors have said about this Western sun sign combination. That was a lot. Tried to really squash in a lot there. This is going pretty long today. Oh, I guess we're about on track. This is 2.5 hours. I thought I was behind, but usually this part of the video ends up being about that long, so I'm happy about that. Got excited there. So that was us having a conversation, ladies and gentlemen, about how the snake generally comes through the archetypes and character of Aries sun, Leo sun, and Scorpio sun, all as one sort of unit. Basically, how does the snake relate to the Mars rulership of these planets? That's basically what we've been talking about today so far. Now we're going to get into some videos talking about what is the individual expression of Leo sun through the snake, Aries sun through the snake. That's what we're going to talk about in this next video. I just want to read a few comments just in case anybody has said anything that I should comment on. No problem, Goosey. Virgo snake. Wonderful. I'm glad you enjoyed, Miss Dee Dee, and you as well, Goosey. I'm glad you guys are enjoying the conversation. I love talking about the snake, and I love talking about the Chinese symbols. So anybody who comes on to our community here, How to Rock Spirit, and talks about it with me, I always love. So, in terms of everything we've just talked about, we really got a lot out there about the nature of the snake coming through the Mars-ruled nature, the fiery nature of Mars, and how there is confluence regarding Mars's ambition, Mars's go-getter sort of mentality, and also the logic of Mars. Mars being very logical. The logic of the snake will probably provide a space for the logic powers of Mars to come through properly for Aries, Leo, and Scorpio. Now, I really want everybody to consider that while that is true, we always have to think about, like, again, no one has talked about how Chinese and Western relate. What I want to consider very deeply is that if you have an Aries sun is a great place for the sun. So the sun will find ways to express that Aries energy. But if you've got Saturn and the sun in Aries, that's really detrimental, because the sun is exalted, so the sun will probably just completely overtake Saturn there, which means you'll have a weak Saturn, and then your Mars will have nothing to stand on. And there's some gross psychological damage being expressed through there, which, if you have that, of course, that is the nature of your karma. And since you realize it, you can deal with it much more logically. And logic is good for you anyway, because logic is good for this group of people. But this is my point, is that if you've got the sun in Aries, but you've got like Saturn in Aries, and if your Mars particularly is in an ugly place, if your Mars is in Cancer, if your Mars is in the 4th house, if your Mars is, it's got very weak in Shadbala. Shadbala is another critical point to consider. If your Mars is super weak in Shadbala, or if it has any other debilitating issues, if it's in Virgo or Gemini, consider then that the snake wants to be logical. The snake is not going to bring logic, though. The nature of your Mars, and also the nature of your Mercury in its own way, but particularly we're talking about Mars for an Aries sun. So Mars is like the universe. If you're an Aries person, the universe is going to put pressure on you to use your logic willfully and realistically and in a stable way, because Mars is about being ready to fight. Now, if you take all this willful energy, if you're an Aries sun, you got lots of willful energy, and your Mars is in a gross place, it's in Virgo or Gemini. So Virgo and Gemini Mars is very scattered. They put a lot of energy towards lots of various things, but they might get weak in their health, or because, they're not paying attention to where their Mars really ought to be expressing. They might not pay attention to their body or something. So that when the opportunity comes for the Aries to express logic in their job or whatever, their heads might be thinking of their favorite fantasy novel that they were reading about back home, because that's a much more interesting way to express their Mars energy to them. But that's not really logical. It's not what Mars is for. So, if you've got Aries sun or Leo sun or Scorpio sun with any damage to your Mars or to the sign that you're in, like if you've got Saturn with the sun in any of those places, this might mean that you have a harder time using your logic. You won't develop and cultivate a proper expression of your logic. A snake will be sorely affected by that. You see? The snake doesn't bring, like we talked about how the snake wants to use logic and rational analysis to go far in its life. Now, if the snake is not putting its Mars to proper use, then it's not going to have the capacity to be discerning with its energy. It'll still want to, though. You know, there's only so many spots for your year sign or your day. You know, if you're in the day of snake or year of the snake or month of the snake or hour, you are going to want to use, you're going to think about what you do in regards to the thing. Like, you know, the month, if you got the snake month, then that's about your work and your career, really. So if you're a snake month person and you're an Aries, you're going to have this strong, willful desire to put your energy somewhere. The snake will want to use it somewhere, because wherever the snake puts its energy, where it finally decides this is the logical place to go, it's really going to stick there. So if you waste your Mars energy because you got a weak Mars, you don't know what to do with it, or if you've got a weak Saturn, you don't cultivate the capacity to constantly act on duty and on, you know, the truth of what you want to do. The snake is going to focus deeply its energy on that place, which is just a shitty place to put your energy. But the Aries is going to make you want to do it. This seems to be right, and the Aries is scattered. Or, you know, the Leo energy. It's like, I got to put it somewhere, so I'm going to put it here. And it's going to come through very powerfully, but it'll hurt the snake energy if it's not analytical and logical and patient. If you don't take the time to research as a snake where you want to put your energy, or if you don't get into the field to research what it is that you want to do with your energy. If you've got a weak Mars, it'll be hard for you to hold any job regarding whatever it is that you want to do. So don't think, just because you read about the fact that the snake likes to be analytical, likes to be logical, likes to be rational, it doesn't mean the snake is going to bring that. It means that if you are that, then your snake energy will have a proper conduit for the expression of your Chinese astrology energy. And that'll be a powerful combination, because part of your energy field, which is made to go in one direction, has that direction open to it. It always sucks when you have like this snake energy that wants to open its door up and put it to somewhere logical and constructive, but you've got like a weak Mars, or you've got some damage to Aries or Scorpio or Leo in your chart that disenfranchises the preferred energy modality of the snake. Right? So this is how we got to kind of think about these things, you know. Really, technically, you could think about it the other way, in the sense that even if all your Western chart's looking good, but you are a snake person, and let's say you're born in the hour of the snake, which means that you're born like, you know, in between 9 and 11. You've got a midday energy where you want to flower. You want to express something powerfully in your chart. But you've got like, you're all water and no snake, you know. Let's say that fire is your day stem, and you've got like the snake on your hour. And so that's all this fire is coming through as your basic nature, but something is draining that. Like you've got a lot of earth, and it's draining your capacity to use your fire energy, this flowering energy. That earth might drain it away. The earth in your chart might drain the fire, which means you're more concerned with expressing and being an artist or something, rather than holding on to a sense of self and center. Then this desire to express and to be this artist might curtail the whole Western chart with this damaged Chinese astrology chart, you know. Or if you're in a Da Yun, that makes it hard to express your energy properly. These are all things that we got to consider when we're talking about Western and Chinese astrology together. And it's something that I'm going to be talking about once I start to... I'm getting a sense, I'm researching more of this Chinese astrology all the time, and I'm going to start doing videos describing how the Bazi chart works as a totality in itself. So, nice. So I'm glad you guys have been enjoying this. I'm glad you guys have been watching live, and to anybody watching at home, thanks for dropping by. I'm Dustin Cormier for How to Rock Spirit. Now we're going to get into the fun stuff, where we are going to read different authors' interpretations of the specific energy of all of these different signs. We're going to learn about Aries snake, we're going to learn about Leo snake, and we're going to learn about Scorpio snake right now in this next video coming up. Thank you so much for watching, and if you feel like tuning into the next ones, feel free.